So after another international break, and there's another one in a month's time, the Bundesliga has returned again. And so obviously we will look back at it now. Starting on Friday, it was Union Berlin versus Gladbach to kickstart the Bundesliga. Union beat Gladbach 3-1 with a double from Danilo Doeki. I think it's fair to say from the off, Union is not the team we're going to be talking about here again. Union weren't exactly at the best either, but that's because their opponent, Gladbach, they're genuinely quite crap. And it's not looking good for them. They're 14 games without a win now in the Bundesliga. Obviously, this extends to last season. They're rock bottom now because Heidenheim drew, so they're now clear bottom. There's no signs of clear improvements either in the team. So relegation could well be on the cards here. There's been nothing, apart from the first game against Leverkusen, there's been no sort of indication that, okay, there's been improvements here and Gladbach are heading in the right direction. Because they're not. And you can't look and think, oh yeah, they're getting better. Because they're not. We've seen this with many teams beforehand. You just kind of sleepwalk into this scenario and then you can't get out of it. And that's the one that Gladbach are in at the moment. And the games aren't going to get any easier either. They play Bayern Munich next. Ironically, that would be the funniest thing ever if they win, if that's their first win of the season. But the way things are going, that's not going to happen. But Gladbach's aim for the season should be survival. Again, I've gone into this many times before, it's quite obvious how they've got into this situation. They have sleepwalked into it. And now they've appointed Ruven Schröder as their Roland Wirtz replacement. The next decision will be who will be the new head coach. But as things stand, things are just, there's no light at the end of the tunnel here. It's just progressively getting darker and darker and darker. Obviously, Tim Kleindienst will return next month. There's obviously injuries to Robin Hack as well. Frank Honorer made his return. But if Kleindienst comes back and there's no improvement, then Gladbach need a miracle to survive. Because it doesn't help that the teams around them, like Heidenheim, who drew 2-2 with Werder Bremen, are actually putting up a fight. And granted, they'll probably still get relegated, but at least they're fighting not to get relegated. They put up a fight against Bremen. They went down twice and managed to come back twice to rescue a point. And that's the difference between the two of them. Gladbach aren't fighting for anything. They don't look like they're putting any sort of meaningful effort in it. At least they're trying. They don't even look like they're doing that. Whereas Heidenheim actually look like they're trying to a degree. But then on the Heidenheim game, at Bremen, obviously they're up to 12th now. Considering how doom and gloom it looked in the first half of the season, or in the first couple of games of the season, this is very good from them. I mean, what Horst Steffen's building is clearly positive now. It helps that more experienced players are back from injury, so they're not just throwing 18-year-olds at the problem. But there are clear signs of improvement now in defense, in attack especially. The arrival of Cameron Puertas right at the end of the transfer window helped massively. And he's brought another dimension to this midfield, and especially it will relieve the creative burden of Romano Schmidt. Then the surprise team of this early start of the season, Cologne, they drew 1-1 with Augsburg. I post clips of this on TikTok, whatever, and I had angry Cologne fans in the comments saying, we played good teams at the start of the season. That didn't happen. The only good teams that you actually played was Hoffenheim and Freiburg. That was it. You've played a Mainz side who are now in the relegation zone. You played Wolfsburg, who are quite crap. You're playing these teams. You played Augsburg as well. You're playing these teams who are not that good. And you give me the reasoning, they were good last season. Last season is now irrelevant. We're nearly 2 months into the new season. And so they thought they were cooking me with this take of, we played hard teams. You didn't. You had an easy run of games, and you weren't that good against Augsburg. And this is an Augsburg side that I've criticised before because they have no sort of identity. I mean, Cologne were rescued by Seidel Mahler. Granted, it's safe to say he is a star in the making. He has ridiculous output for the amount of minutes that he's played. I think for his career, it would be best if he stays in the Bundesliga next and takes the next step. Don't go to Bayern, but go to the next step of Bundesliga club and then prove yourself there. Because we have to be honest with ourselves. He's only had 2 months of first team football in the Bundesliga. Obviously, Premier League clubs don't care. They'll spend 50 million on him next summer if they have to. But he still needs to get used to this now. He's having these great moments, but he needs to deliver on these consistently now. That has actually started to look a lot better is Leverkusen. They seem to finally click, or seem to have finally clicked for them. They beat Mainz 4-3. I think the scoreline doesn't do how they played justice. Leverkusen were good. I mean, they were good for most of the game, and then they just kind of switched off the latest part of it. The midfield was impressive. It was Alex Garcia and Eki Fernandez, and then up front they have Christian Cafana, who has now scored 3 goals in 3 games. And those look like a really good backup option to Patrick Schick and could potentially be the successor to Patrick Schick going forward. So, as I said repeatedly, Leverkusen needed the October international break. That would have been the first time that Kasper Heumann would have had enough time to at least push the team in the right direction of how he wants them to play. And he was able to do that. And there's a positive trend now. I will say that refereeing in this game, was quite crap. Both sides, should Mainz have had a penalty? Maybe not. Should have Dwayne Tapsoba been sent off? Potentially, stuff like that. The refereeing from a general point of view is quite crap. But as I said, for Mainz, they're currently 16th. And whether this is because they're struggling to deal with European football, or it's the absence of Jonathan Burkhardt now, who obviously played for Frankfurt. There's a clear, they haven't clicked like they did last season. And there's something going wrong here. And they kind of need to find the problem quick. Because now they're not as bad as they were 2 seasons ago, but they're kind of slipping backwards again now. 2 teams that aren't slipping backwards are Leipzig and Hamburg. Granted, Hamburg lost this game. Leipzig won 2-1. But Leipzig are now 6 unbeaten since their opening day loss to Bayern. Granted, Ole Werner has proved to be a bit of a surprise in the early stages of the season, especially with Leipzig, especially because his dislike of playing young players at Bremen. I mean, as things stand, Leipzig is second. Another challenger heir to Bayern at the moment is they're only 5 points off of them, as they only. It's quite a big margin. Christoph Baumgart has had a bit of a kind of revival. Who would have thought, when you're not being shoehorned to fit in around Xavi Simons, that you could actually shine? I mean, Leipzig have adopted this 4-3-3 now, and it's allowed Baumgart to be more of an 8 than a 10, and it's worked very well. I mean, he has 4 goals this season already. Last season he scored 5. The season before he scored 5 as well. So he's on course for his best season yet. Which clearly shows the work that Werner has done to get the best out of him. I mean, the midfield 3 that they played against Hamburg was Baumgart, Niklas Sievald, and Asana Udriogo. And again, Udriogo, who obviously struggled last season with injuries, is slowly finding form now and delivering on why Leipzig bought him from Schalke. While Hamburg showed that they are good enough to stay in the league, again, they put in a strong performance against Leipzig. Granted, you kind of bet on them to lose, but it wasn't embarrassing. Whatever, they put in a good performance and they continue to build and are in a good place to be. Granted, I still think they're going to be in the bottom half of the table, but they are currently 11th, which is probably a lot higher than most people thought they would be. And they still have a kind of favourable run of games on the horizon, where they play Wolfsburg next, who we'll get onto now, because they lost 3-0 to Stuttgart. Again, Stuttgart are back to the best. Stuttgart are back because they won 3-0. They're up to 3rd now, and everything's slowly clicking. I mean, Bilal El Khanous again shined. Granted, he's a completely different player to Nick Woltemade and Enzo Mio, but he is slowly filling that gap that either of them left. And then the midfield duo as well, this is the duo going forward for Stuttgart. It's Angelo Stiller and Chamber Andres. Like after Ken Carazor, just head to Turkey already. It's over for you. Because this duo, like Stuttgart can build something special off this duo, and including El Canus as well. And they're now really heading in the right direction. And they're building momentum and they're building up steam. Like they struggled in the early stages of the season, but like they've won 4 on the bounce now. They're going where they need to be going. So I think it's safe to say that Stuttgart are back. And what helps is Dennis Undav has also returned. Now it's up to him to refine his form of when they finish second. And then if he does, then they'll be okay in the absence of Demirovic. Then the top game or top spiel was obviously the Klassiker, Bayern versus Dortmund. Bayern won this 2-1 and they were great once again. Like Harry Kane was... Again, I shit on Kane when he scores loads of penalties, and I think that's valid. But like, so far this season, he's barely scored... He's still scored quite a few, but like his overall game, he's gotten so much better compared to last season. And granted, he did score the opener, but it was kind of like everything else he did. He was playing basically more as a midfielder, and he was very good at it. There's a real like scenario here that the older Kane gets, he takes the Wayne Rooney route and just plays as a midfielder as he comes to the end of his career. Because like, yeah, he's not that mobile, but like he can play a ball, and he showed that many a time. And it was even the fact he did the work on the defensive end as well. When Bayern were defending the lead, he was making tackles in his own 18-yard box. However, as good as Bayern were, Dortmund did bring this onto themselves. They were way too defensive in the first half. They didn't register a shot at all. And so they continued to invite so much pressure. And like there's a scenario here that they go in 2-3-0 down at half time and the game's completely over. And then in the second half, they played much better, so much more energy. And actually went toe-to-toe with Bayern, but it was far too little too late for them. It didn't help that they did the most Dortmund thing ever and made a mistake for the second goal, which is very Dortmund. But like, if they played how they did in the second half from the beginning, they could have won the game, or they could have at least gotten a draw. But they didn't. They were far too defensive, and it backfired massively. Obviously, the occasion may have got to them and be like, oh, we're playing Bayern, it's an early season title challenge. We can't like go hell for leather because we'll just expose ourselves. But like, they go kind of hell for leather in the second half and it nearly works. So I think if I was Dortmund, I would be upset with how we played in the first half because we were just not good enough. And like, you basically then gave yourself 45 minutes to chase a game against Bayern instead of 90 minutes. Now Bayern are 5 points ahead of second. As things stand, like it doesn't look like they're going to close the gap at all. But obviously it's a testament to how good Bayern have been. On Sunday, Freiburg and Frankfurt drew 2-2. Jonathan Burkhardt scored a brace. But again, Frankfurt kind of like are struggling defensively. They play Liverpool in midweek. With how Liverpool are playing, you could think, okay, actually, maybe Frankfurt could get a result here. But how Frankfurt played defensively, I don't think that is going to be the case. Like, they are too wide open, and I'm still not convinced by Carlos Santos. I think he had good performances last season. He made like loads of saves to like win Frankfurt a game, for example. But this season, he just hasn't looked like convincing. And he hasn't looked sure in himself either. It kind of makes you think, like, could Mikael Zetterer come in because he brings more experience and is probably more calm. Frankfurt have now kind of like mellowed out. So they started off the season really strongly, but then they just started conceding a ton of goals. And they've kind of like hit a reality check now. I mean, they've only won 1 of their last 5. And that was against Gladbach, and that ended 6-4. So Frankfurt need to find like the second win now and find their level. And because the top 4 will be close, as in like, we're forgetting Bayern here. The top 4 will be close. And so Frankfurt need to stay within touching distance of them, because on the day they can easily make top 4. And then the final game to round out the weekend was Hoffenheim 3, St. Pauli 0. Hoffenheim, obviously, they continue to build under Christian Ilse, especially considering how tragic they were last season. Obviously, the attack is quite impressive. Visnik Aslani, Tim Lemperler, Andrej Kramaric as well, and then Mohamed Damar off the bench. And they're probably a dark horse for a European place, especially the Conference League. Whereas St. Pauli, they obviously started the season strongly, but they've kind of had a reality check now in recent weeks. They're down to 14th because they've lost their last 4 games. And so they've kind of hype of St. Pauli, granted I was on there as well, I'm not going to lie, but the hype of St. Pauli, Fujita, Hitunji, whatever, and they've just kind of like hit a wall and had a bit of a reality check considering their early season form. The table is Bayern Munich are obviously first, 21 points, 100% record. Leipzig are then second on 16 points. Stuttgart are third on 15, Dortmund on 14 in fourth, Leverkusen also fourth or fifth on 14, and Cologne are sixth on 11. So who you would predict finish top 5 is slowly kind of like is settling down now. I mean, we're approaching a quarter of the way through the season, so you can kind of get like a lot better understanding of each team now. And then obviously in the bottom half, Mainz are in the relegation playoff in 16th, Heidenheim are 17th, and they're both on 4 points. And Wolfsburg are 5th on 5 points. So there's a lot of chopping and changing. And then obviously dead last, Borussia Mönchengladbach, without a win. Is the end in sight for Gladbach? No, because next weekend they play Bayern Munich. Obviously Gladbach are Bayern's like bogey team notoriously, but in like recent seasons when Bayern have been going up and Gladbach have been going downhill, there's kind of become less and less. As much as I would like to take a big hit of hopium, there's no chance in hell Gladbach win this game. If they do, absolute cinema, fair enough. But part of me thinks they won't. A strong part of me thinks they won't. Like even a draw would be a success at this point. Elsewhere, Borussia Dortmund play Cologne in the Topspiel game. Obviously, Cologne. This is a challenge for Cologne. If they perform well and get a good result, then you can be like, okay, fair enough, Cologne are a good team. But Dortmund will want to avenge their performance in the conference, in the Klassiker. Then Leverkusen play Freiburg, Stuttgart play Mainz, and Leipzig play Augsburg. And then obviously there's European games. Frankfurt play Liverpool, as I mentioned. Bayer Leverkusen play PSG. Borussia Dortmund play Copenhagen, and then Bayern Munich play Club Brugge in the Europa League. Stuttgart play Fenerbahce, which should be a difficult game, and then Freiburg play Utrecht, and then Mainz in the Conference League play a team from Bosnia. So that is it for the roundup. Let me know what you think. Can anyone actually catch Bayern, or are Gladbach generally generationally shit? Let me know.